Hi guys, my name's Jackie, for those of you guys who haven't met me, and I'm currently the Web Infrastructure and Web Intelligence Lead at Uber. What that means is that my teams actually own the CMSs that power Uber.com and about 75 other different web properties, and we also own all the self-serve data, tooling, and analytics. But I've been really lucky to work at, can I go back? Okay. I've been super lucky to have experience in SEO across many companies. That includes companies like Square, had a brief stint at Uber, then went over to Dropbox as the SEO lead there, and then went back to Uber again. And one of the things I've learned, despite the fact that all these companies are very, very different, is that one of the toughest things in being an enterprise SEO is actually getting stuff done. And once 𝗙cie, who is a technical SEO agency, they asked SEOs on Twitter, what is the toughest part of your job? And about 33%, the vast majority, said that getting my recommendations implemented is one of the toughest parts of being an SEO. This also happened again when Christina Ozrenko, who's actually a fabulous technical SEO consultant, who is actually here at MozCon, so if you see her, she's the girl with the fabulous bright pink hair. She asked the Twitter SEOs, on average, how many of your SEO recommendations actually get implemented. And another 33%, this seems to be like the magic number, 33%, is about 20 to 40% of SEO recommendations get implemented. And a few very sad 22.7% don't even get their SEO recommendations implemented 20% of the time, which is not great, right? Because if your SEO recommendations don't get implemented, then you're not going to grow. And I have to say, one of the easiest ways I've learned to get shut down in SEO is starting a sentence like this. We need to do something for SEO. Almost always, this is going to actually get you one of these. No one cares. No one cares. The second you start saying, oh, I need to do this for SEO, or we need to do this for SEO, in my mind, you've already kind of lost the battle. No one else cares about SEO. One of the qualities in life that's definitely proven to be true in both work and in interpersonal relationships is that everyone always cares about themselves. So if you start a conversation with, we need to do this for SEO, in my mind, a lot of times you have already lost. And so I've gotten really good at trying to find co-conspirators in the workplace, identifying people on other teams or other parts of the company who want to get things done too. And I make these people my allies. So these are the three teams that I usually look to when I need to get things implemented for SEO. There are three allies that I find that you can reliably find in the enterprise. The first one is your legal and accessibility team. The second one is a close business owner. So that could be somebody like a product manager or a product marketing manager. And lastly, even surprisingly, eng2, if you're a little tricky about it. But let's talk about the first one. Let's talk about team one, legal or the accessibility team if you have one. A lot of the companies I've worked at, maybe only one or two, Square and Dropbox, had a full-time accessibility person. Usually people will work with like a third party who specializes in accessibility to do an audit. Those can get pretty expensive. They're like $10,000. Other times people will use software like 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹liche to actually audit their site as well. But the reason why I think accessibility is really interesting is because it's actually many SEO best practices are also accessibility best practices as well. And in case you're not familiar with web accessibility, first I'll answer, what is web accessibility? So web accessibility is the practice of making websites, web applications, and web content usable for everyone, including individuals with disabilities. It involves designing and developing digital resources in a way that accommodates all types of disabilities, such as auditory, cognitive, neurological, physical, speech, and visual impairments. This approach, often guided by the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, ensures the internet is inclusive, user-friendly, and legally compliant. And they've been around for a really long time, like 1999, so maybe older than some of you guys. But so they've been around for a really long time. And right now we're on WCAG 2.1, and they basically help the world be a little bit more of a more inclusive, friendly place. But why should you care as an SEO? What does this have anything to do with us? First off, you can actually get sued, which is not great. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Also, again, a lot of SEO best practices are also accessibility best practices. And also, it's honestly just the right thing to do. You'd be surprised how many people actually suffer from some kind of disability. About 4.5% of people are colorblind. So when looking at this graph, like if you're somebody who sees like a fairly broad range of colors, it looks like it makes sense. That same graph without color really lacks a lot of context, and it really changes how well you're able to communicate with your customers. About 1 in 8 men is colorblind, and 1 in 0.5% of women are colorblind. So ladies, maybe your husband really just can't tell the difference between like your new dresses or your colors. A lot of them really can't see. And the reality is there's a lot of guidelines, guys. There's about like 75 different guidelines. They don't change that often, but most of the times you just have to meet what they call level A through AA. There's 3 different levels, level A, level AA, and level AAA, with level A being the lowest, and level AA being middle, and level AAA being like top. And currently we're in 𝗙cie 2.1. I think it's been around for, I want to say like 4 years. And you can distill down those 75 points really into like 4 major themes. First one is that the content is perceivable. What that means is you're able to interact with it with your senses. So you can read it, you can listen to it. That's what perceivable means. The next one is operable. It means that people can actually like interact with your site. The next one is that things are understandable, which means like you're not using really flowery language or words that are too long, run-on sentences, etc. And the last one is that it's robust. So what that means is no matter what user agent you use, device the person is using, assistive devices they're using, that they're able to also interact with and mess with the site. And some of these might look kind of familiar. Here's one example, page titled, level A. Web pages have to have titles that describe the topic or purpose. AKA, they need to have a title tag, which is probably one of the most fundamental and important features you need on your website. If you don't have your keyword inside the title tag and it's a super competitive word and that's the head term, it's kind of unlikely that you're going to rank for this term. Here's another one, text alternatives. You need to provide text alternatives for any non-text content so that it can be changed into other forms people need, such as large print, braille, speech, symbols, or etc. You think about it, when we think about like image SEO, a lot of times we'll do things like we will name the images, we'll add an alt tag to the images. The alt text is really important because not only does it provide valuable information for screen readers and when the image breaks, there's like some kind of context there on what the image has, it's also a critical part of showing up in Google image search, and you're not gonna be able to show up in Google image search without it. And outside of image tags, there's also a laundry list of accessibility wins that are also SEO wins too. So that's things like having descriptive and unique title tags, which we just mentioned, image names in alt text, transcripts for rich media like videos, having a consistent logical navigation throughout your site. That's also really important for building your HTML footprint, which is a big part of actually showing up for like little site search in SERPs. And also using descriptive anchor text in links. And so I'm not gonna talk too much about title tags. Hopefully you guys know what title tags are. If you don't, it's gonna be tough. So we are going to go have a hypothetical scenario. Let's say like your company wants to start doing podcasts. Well, podcasts are kind of difficult from an SEO perspective because Google, can't like listen to the podcast. They don't necessarily know what's in the podcast. There's not a lot of like crawlable, indexable content for them. But one of the requirements in the 𝗙cie is that transcripts are required at 𝗙cie level A because of course not everyone can listen and is able to hear. So if you wanted to do a podcast, but make it a little bit more SEO friendly, here's what I would do. I would transcribe that podcast with something like Clean Voice or Podcast. So honestly, there's like a million different tools out there. A lot of them are free that you can transcribe things like YouTube videos or podcasts. You can have all that content there for you. And you can just do like a quick grammar edit. Usually sometimes there's like a little bit of funniness, but overall, it's usually very, very good. You can even then just summarize that into bullets with something like ChatGPT. And now you have all the audio of the content of your podcast. You have quick little summary bullet notes of what your podcast was about. And now your content has more legs, it's indexable, it's also very search engine friendly, and it's much more accessible. And I think that this is actually also a really like whitelist way of using ChatGPT for SEO. I'm still kind of on the fence personally about using ChatGPT just for SEO content and not having anything unique and valuable to add, because I think it's really obvious for Google and other search engines when you've done that. But when it's your own content, you're just synthesizing that, it's your own unique spin, you really don't have any kind of like worries about getting slapped for not having quality content. But let's look at a real example then, so something that actually really happened. So prior to the SEO team existing at Square, we were a very, very brand-heavy website. Jack Dorsey is a huge lover of brands. It's why we interact with the Square point of sale. It's a beautiful, aesthetic piece of hardware. We're very, very minimalist. We don't have a lot of words on the page. And during the brand redesign, all of the internal links on the site turned to learn more. Which also, by the way, there is like an accessibility guideline that says that you want to be able to have internal links have descriptive text in the anchor tag, right? Which, of course, as SEOs, we care about that too. We want there to be, a descriptive word in the anchor so that Google knows, like, this page is about payments and this page is about card reader, and it helps give Google a little bit more context on what pages to rank for what terms. So what happened during this redesign was that all internal links changed to learn more. And the result of that was Square actually stopped ranking for pretty much all of the non-brand terms that they were ranking for, which was not great. But they did start ranking really well for learn more. That was a really big mistake. That's how the SEO team came to be at Square. So you can see, one thing that really should have been done for accessibility anyways, but also had a very real material SEO impact. Okay, so the next one. Okay, and of course, like I mentioned, you can also get sued, which is not great. These lawsuits are quite expensive, but they're like just at that cusp where it's like not so expensive where maybe you would just pay it anyway. And there's a lot of legal firms that like specialize in these kind of lawsuits. So Goop in 2022 was actually sued for not being able to be accessible via screen readers for visually impaired individuals. You can see other sites like Zola. Zola is a wedding company. Also was sued by a girl in New York for not being accessible for screen readers. And you can see like kind of the contents of this lawsuit is that Zola.com contains significant access barriers that make it difficult, if not impossible, for blind and visually impaired customers to use the website. In fact, the access barriers make it impossible for blind and visually impaired users to even complete a transaction on the website, which not only is that not great, but it's also bad for your business. People want to transact on your website. You want to make that as easy as possible. And whereas a lot of sites have been sued for accessibility. Some of these are actually like transactional sites like Nike and Amazon. Some of them, though, are just content sites like Fox News. And some of these are really just marketing sites because last I checked, you can't buy a Rolex on Rolex.com, but you still can get in trouble for not being accessible. And so anyways, honestly, the accessibility guidelines can be quite intimidating, even when you have somebody whose literal function inside the company is to walk the company through this. And so one of the things I really like is this Web Accessibility in Mind checklist. I've basically like highlighted all of the ones that also have a potential SEO impact, just so you can know for your own knowledge that these could potentially have an SEO impact. And you can access that at bit.ly SEO access for a complete checklist. Or you can just look at the little QR code. So I would recommend spearheading accessibility projects with your legal compliance team to make the web a better, more equitable place, while also improving SEO visibility. It's the right thing to do, and could even help you win an SEO. Next up, enlisting the business owner. This is one of my favorites. There are a lot of benefits in enlisting your business owner. One, they'll care about their product being successful. Multiple people escalating importance of initiative also makes it a lot easier to get it over the line. Their goals and incentives are also totally aligned with yours. They want stuff to happen too. They don't want their product to die. They don't want to do a bad job. And I also really like this because by going to people first and kind of initiating this conversation, I think you can really build trust with your stakeholders, and it shows that you care about them and you care about them being successful. And they'll like that you took initiative. And I think there's two options when you're talking to your stakeholders. So option number one. So option number one, you can find a business owner who would care about this being successful. So here are a few of my favorite kind of like personas to work with. So these are real people I've actually worked with. They're fabulous. First one is a product manager. This person usually has access to a lot of engineering resources, and I love because they have that kind of like get stuff done mentality, and they're just such a pleasure to work with, and they're super scrappy. Also, product marketing managers, a lot of times they have access to things like content writers or access to things like content budget. And so they're really great to work with as well. And of course, people like who are content leads or blog owners, you just naturally can work with those people very easily. Another thing, too, is to maybe also identify somebody who works on a Tier 2 project. And what do I mean by a Tier 2 product? The reality is, like, most of us work in companies where a lot of times you'll actually have, like, a suite of products that the company is working on. But at any given time, not everything is, like, the P0, the top priority, the number one thing that has to be done. I like to sometimes work with, like, the Tier 1, Tier 2 products. And I like to do that for a few reasons. The first one is because that way I can diversify my efforts. If I have all my eggs in one basket, the reality is not every single SEO initiative you do is going to see an impact. It's just like a CRO experiment or a conversion rate optimization experiment. You're not going to see impact in every single thing that you do, so by kind of throwing more bets out there, you're much more likely to see success in some place. And anytime you're making money for the company, it's a good thing. So I always feel pretty good about it. These people also tend to be like a little bit more desperate for help, and so they're also usually very willing to take help from you as well. And one of the things that I like is they can actually kind of be the pit bull for you and push others to do things that you want them to do. It's also less stakeholder management on my side because they already know that I want to help them, they know what the blockers are, and they can also allocate their own resources, whether that's content, money, or engineering, to your initiative. So how do you do this? So first off, you identify someone who would care about this being successful. And number two, you would tell them about what they could potentially get if XYZ was done. So that involves usually a quick, a simple forecasting exercise, but you can just do some like napkin math, honestly. Number three, you agree on who will drive what and what is the timing, just to kind of start setting expectations. And then four, you want to highlight time to see impact. I think this is really important to building trust and managing expectations, to start talking about that really early in the process, because otherwise I find that that's when usually trust kind of breaks down in a relationship. When people think that SEO is going to be this super fast, responsive thing, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it can take quite some time to see impact for your changes. Okay. So first thing you want to do is enlist a business owner to get more resources, more urgency, and have a higher chance of success overall with many people prioritizing the same initiative. But what if you have no business owners? Sometimes you don't have any business owners, you're on your own, then okay. Then what I like to do is I really like to work on my packaging. You should tie back your work to a major company priority or initiative. Most companies that you work in, we're going to have some kind of hero theme for the year. That could be drive revenue growth in this area, grow in US and Canada, whatever it is. Just identify what it is that the company cares about the most, that they're going to be putting the most resources towards, and piggyback onto that. You want to identify every SEO initiative you want to do that could have a positive impact on the business priority, and package these as benefiting priority X, Y, or Z. So rather than say something like, hey, we want to fix broken links on this site and modify information architecture to improve SEO rankings or traffic, which again, when you start saying things like, oh, we need to do something to improve SEO, you're kind of already losing the battle. You want to say something like, we'll fix broken links on the site and modify information architecture to increase traffic and revenue to payments, which was the thing that they actually cared about. So here's an example at Square. For 1 year, we had, our initiative was called Win the Tap. And it was because at the time, mobile payments were pretty new to the United States, really common elsewhere, but for some reason, they just took forever to get legs in the United States. And our goal was to sell 2 million Square readers, which I thought was crazy because I'm not the best math person. But at the time, only 50,000 people in the world on any single month were searching for Apple Pay. So we literally had to sell more readers than people were even interested in Apple Pay itself. So it was a pretty audacious goal. But because it was a very audacious goal, we had a lot of backing, a lot of resources. And I shamelessly tied back everything to payments. Things like information architecture, automated internal linking, site bloat improvements. We even built midline CTAs that were customizable. So an editor could add in a CTA, add in a custom image, and basically have an inline CTA inside their blog to drive users down funnel, because a lot of times blogs just don't convert quite as much as you need them to. And honestly, any of these could work. Things like page speed improvements, internal linking, navigation, site health, errors. You could really tie all of these back to whatever that hero initiative it is. I think a lot of times when people think about the hero initiative, they think it has to be something like, oh, I'm going to create top of funnel content for payments, or I'm going to create top of funnel content for point of sale. But as we know, a lot of times when you're working in enterprise, sometimes the most impactful things you can be doing are really engineering led and have much more to do with things like information architecture and internal linking than they do things like creating top of funnel content. And here's an example. When we automated internal linking, we basically, on both our help center as well as our blog, automated pieces site so that for whatever was kind of like the main topic of the site, we had a descriptive anchor link on those pages. While I said I did it for payments, the reality is I did it for everyone. We did it for payroll, we had it for appointments, we had it for point of sale. Usually when I work with a business owner, I just try to sell them on the dream that's like motivating and exciting. But when I work with Eng, I really focus on making it scalable and making sure that I'm setting myself up for success even when people stop caring about the Apple Pay reader, even when they stop caring about something like point of sale. Because the reality is, the SEO foundations in your site, even though SEO can be really complicated, if you do it right, normally it works. So I usually feel pretty good about making sure that these SEO fundamentals are taken care of, even if I have to package it into something totally irrelevant like payments. So you can enlist a business owner to scale your impact, build trust, and relationships. There's so many benefits here, and for you enlisting your business owner. For you as the SEO, it can help you increase your impact by having many, many more bets. Also, it'll help you build relationships with your peers. And the more wins you have with them, the more you work with them, the more they're gonna want to work with you, and the better relationship you're gonna have. You're gonna be able to get more things done. And I love that it makes it not just about SEO, which means that it's much more likely to be successful because you have many people working against the same initiative. And there's also benefits for your peer as well, too. Their product can grow without budget, which is very, very rare in a big company. And it also gives them something to do if there's something like a tier 1 or tier 2 product, and they're not quite as prioritized as somebody else. Okay, and lastly, Eng. Whenever you're working with the engineering team, you just want to ask yourself, is this a bug or is it a feature? And I know not everyone is always lucky enough to have the best relationships with their engineering team, especially if you're new to the company. Maybe they've worked with an SEO team in the past that really kind of burned them. A lot of times it takes a little bit of time to build trust. But like you, the vast majority of engineers really do want to do the right thing. They really want to do an impactful project. They want the company to be successful, especially in a place like Silicon Valley, where everyone is a stakeholder, everyone owns stock in the company, everyone wants to see the company grow, they want to see spend go down, they want to see revenue go up, and you as an SEO are really well positioned to help them with that. And one of the reasons why I feel like it can be really hard to get things implemented with engineers is because there does need to be a certain level of trust before you start working together. But the good thing is, you really don't need trust or a relationship to fix bugs. Every single engineering team I've worked with, even engineers I've never worked with in the company, there's probably around 15,000 of them at Uber, if I find a bug that has a material business impact, almost always they will pick that bug up right away. But how do you know it's a bug? Just follow this checklist. 1, is this creating a confusing brand experience? Are people, seeing copy on one page and not actually seeing, similar copy on another page? Is a button not working? All these kind of things are confusing brand experiences, or having, disparate navigation systems as people move through the site. Those are all not good brand experiences. The next one, is this impacting any customer, human or bot? Doing enterprise SEO is really just like web product management, except one of your key customers is Googlebot. Googlebot is a very important customer too. And lastly, is this impacting other channels like SEM? I personally love it when SEM ads go out, just because it adds a lot of urgency when a company like Uber can't spend money. But also, the other nice thing about channels like SEM is not only does it add more urgency, they have really strong feedback loops. A lot of times when an SEM ad goes out, suddenly the ads are not running, there's no revenue being spent, there's a page is down. There's a lot more urgency and a really strong feedback loop with SEM that is just not available to SEO. SEO is a lot more nuanced. A lot of times we know something is bad, but we won't necessarily see that right away in the results. But here are examples of things that are definitely bugs, not SEO features. So one of the things I love using is the mobile-friendly test, because anytime I'm not quite sure if Google's able to see something, you literally just plop in the URL into the mobile-friendly test, and you're able to see can Google actually see the content? So this isn't cropped out or anything for privacy reasons. It actually just didn't render at all. The navigation, the images, the content, it literally just could not render. We had created a new framework that was custom to us. It was not crawlable by bots. And that is definitely a bug, not an SEO feature. There's good bots out there. They should be able to crawl and index your site. So this was a bug, and this got fixed. Another example is having content differences on mobile versus desktop. So in this example, it's kind of a little bit small, sorry, but it's basically showing that on the mobile site and the desktop site, they were actually missing the H1 on one of the versions, and then also was missing a huge chunk of very descriptive text on the page. That's also a bug. There should be parity between mobile and desktop. And I love using SEO Radar for this. This is a screenshot of this tool. It's not like the most beautiful tool in the world, but it's definitely really helpful from doing an observability perspective. Really love using it. It's super helpful. You just have to plop in your URL, you hit submit, and you can get an immediate diff of the mobile versus desktop version. Another issue that happens once in a while is blocking Googlebot. That is definitely a bug. Do not block Googlebot. One way that I've seen this happen quite frequently is in actually robots.txt files. People will have this disallow all, which I love when I see this too, whenever I see this on the site, because I feel like it's good job security. But basically what happens, this directive means please don't crawl us. Everyone don't crawl us. And the kind of thing that sucks about your robots.txt file is only good bots listen to it anyway. So all the bad bots are still going to crawl you in this scenario, and then all the good bots are going to stop crawling you, like Googlebot and BingBot, which is really not good. So that's definitely a bug. I've definitely seen that before, many times. Another example when people block Googlebot is also with rate limiting. So people rate limit for a bunch of reasons. Generally speaking, there's no good reason to limit how much Googlebot or BingBot is crawling your site. It's very unusual for a site to not be able to handle Googlebot velocity, and they're generally a very good actor. And so anytime you're having to do something where you feel like you have to rate limit them, there's something actually something actually fundamentally wrong usually with your own site, and not really Googlebot at all. But so here's an example of when Googlebot got rate limited. This is the crawl stats view inside of Google Webmaster Tools. I don't know why it's hiding inside settings. I'm gonna have to ask Daniel for that after this talk. But it's in your little settings section inside of Google Search Console. And it's really cool because even if you don't have access to Googlebot data, you can see what is the general trend of how Google is crawling my site. And generally speaking, there is a positive correlation to how Googlebot is traversing and crawling your site and how well they think of your site. If they start pulling back a lot or if they start not hitting pages on your site, that's generally a really good signal that Google is not seeing good things on your site. Either the content's not changing, it's not high quality, they're not interested in it, because crawling is a really expensive endeavor for Google. It costs them a lot of money, so they do it very sparingly. But anyways, so we ended up rate limiting. And you can see here, there's an immediate fall off of Googlebot's hits to our site, which was not great. But the good thing is, even if you're not in SEO, nobody likes a down and to the right graph. All I had to do was send the first half of this graph to the engineering team and say, hey, down to the right, this is when you launch this. And you can see there was a pretty big impact. And that pretty much got fixed right away. You guys can see. So rate limiting is always generally a really bad practice. But the good thing is down and to the right is universally bad, up and to the right is pretty universally good. And also, having 500 errors on your robots.txt. This is also a pretty big issue. It's actually much better to not have a robots.txt file at all than have 500 errors on your robots.txt. If you have 500 errors on your robots.txt, Google will basically not crawl you, which is pretty bad. And actually having 500 errors anywhere on your site is really bad. Having 500 errors on your robots.txt will actually prevent you from being crawled at all. But the really good thing, though, with 500 errors that I've found is that most engineers really care about them too, right? They're not a great show of engineering excellence. They hurt business continuity. And so most engineers will really care about this, but this is just an extra thing that you should be keeping an eye on for, which is if you have 500 errors in your robots.txt, honestly, it's gonna be really tough for you to show up in search. And there's honestly so many others, whether that's things like bringing in content through a click and scroll element is really common. Having broken links on your site. All these things are really important, or even having a URL in your sitemap that doesn't exist or isn't meant to be indexed. Those are all things that you usually find a lot of support for inside of your engineering team. And they'll be happy to fix them. Because bugs are just a natural part of software development. So if it's not an SEO feature, try filing it as a bug. And I hope the thing that you guys take away from this is that sometimes your SEO team really isn't an SEO team at all. I always kind of think of SEO as being a team sport because we're kind of the ones who are crafting the narrative and trying to sell the SEO initiatives. But a lot of times we really need stakeholder buy-in and help as well to get things across the line. So whenever you're kind of stuck, I hope you consider these 3 things. 1, work with your legal or accessibility team to get some SEO best practices and accessibility best practices in place. 2, if that doesn't work, you can also find a business owner who would also care about the success of this product. Or you can, of course, piggyback onto a really important company initiative. And worst comes to worst, you can always file bugs with Eng if you find them. If you learn how to package your SEO projects in the framing of other people's motivations, you can start getting them prioritized and start winning in SEO. That's all, folks. You can follow me. I'm 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹cie𝘄 on Twitter. I mean X. Follow me on X.